His father was in a French prison, charged as a war criminal. The man who designed tanks for Hitler, who built the machinery of a regime that had just burned half of Europe to the ground. The son was 35 years old. No factory, no money, no country that wanted anything to do with the Porsche name. Just a small Austrian town called Gmünd, a cold garage, and a box of Volkswagen parts. Most men would have walked away. Ferry Porsche was not most men. Act 1. The Weight of a Name, 1945 to 1947. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with inheriting a name the world has decided to hate. Ferdinand Porsche, the father, was a genius. Genuinely, uncomfortably brilliant. He had designed the Volkswagen, the people's car, a machine that was supposed to give ordinary Germans mobility and dignity. He had also designed the Tiger tank, the Panzer, weapons that killed hundreds of thousands of people across a continent. Now he sat in a cell in Dijon, and Ferry sat in Gmünd, in the Austrian mountains, with winter coming and nowhere to go. He could have disappeared, changed his name, found quiet work somewhere, and let the past bury itself. A lot of people did that in 1945. It was a practical solution to an impossible situation. But Ferry kept coming back to one thought. There was no car, not one car in the world, that he actually wanted to drive. Everything was too heavy, too soft, too compromised. Too much car and not enough machine. If such a car existed, he would buy it. It didn't exist, so he would build it. With what, exactly? The garage in Gmünd was barely heated. The tools were second-hand. The engineers who gathered around Ferry, a small, loyal group who had worked with his father, were being paid in promises and shared meals. Materials were rationed. Steel was controlled. Half of Europe's industry had been bombed into gravel. But Volkswagen parts were available. The engine, the suspension, the gearbox. Parts designed for a humble people's car, made in the millions, accessible even in the ruins of post-war Austria. Ferry looked at them the way a sculptor looks at a piece of stone, not as what they were, but as what they could become. He sketched. Then he sketched again. Then he argued with his engineers about weight, about balance, about where the engine should sit. He had no wind tunnel, no computers, no corporate budget. He had intuition and obsession, and a name he was determined to redeem. The blueprints went up on the wall of the cold garage. The work began. Act 2. The Garage, 1947 to 1948. If you've ever worked with cold metal in an unheated space in an Austrian winter, you understand something about what happened in Gmünd. Your hands stop cooperating. Precision becomes painful. The gap between what you imagine and what you can physically do narrows to almost nothing. They worked anyway. The frame was welded by hand, a simple, lightweight ladder structure that was almost elegant in its honesty. No excess, nothing that didn't need to be there. Ferry had one commandment above all others. The car must be light. Not because lightness was fashionable, because lightness was the only weapon he had. He couldn't outspend anyone. He couldn't out-engineer anyone with better equipment. But he could build something that weighed almost nothing and let the road do the rest. The body was shaped by a man named Friedrich Weber, a coach builder who worked mostly by eye and hand. No stamping machines, no industrial presses. Just aluminum sheets and wooden bucks, and the particular intelligence of a craftsman who understood curves the way musicians understand rhythm. The shape that emerged was like nothing else on the road. Rounded, almost organic. The fenders blended into the body in a way that was aerodynamically intuitive before anyone had properly measured it. The windscreen curved gently. The whole car had a kind of held breath quality, like it was always slightly leaning forward, always about to go. In the summer of 1948, they pushed it out of the garage. Ferry climbed in. He drove it for the first time on a mountain road outside Gmünd, and somewhere in that drive, something settled in him. Not triumph, not relief, something quieter than both. It was right. The car was right. He wrote to his father in prison that night. He told him what they'd built. He told him it worked. Ferdinand Porsche, sitting in a French cell reading
Act
his
3.
son's letter,
The world
reportedly wept.
1948 to 1950.
The first public showing of the Porsche 356 was at the Geneva Motor Show in 1949. Ferry drove it there himself, across the Alps, in a car with no heater, minimal weather protection, and exactly 0 miles of official testing on public roads. If something broke, that was the end of it. Nothing broke. Geneva received it with the particular cautious enthusiasm that the Swiss reserve for things they recognize as important, but aren't quite ready to celebrate. Orders came in. Not many, but enough. Enough to keep the lights on in Gmünd. Enough to keep the dream alive. That same year, Ferdinand was released from prison. He was old now, sick, fragile, diminished by captivity. He came back to a company that bore his name, but had been built entirely without him, by his son, with borrowed tools, in a cold garage, out of sheer refusal to stop. The old man walked around the 356 slowly. He looked at the lines. He opened the engine lid. He sat in the driver's seat. He didn't say much, but he put his hand on Ferry's shoulder before he walked away. That was enough. Production moved to Stuttgart in 1950, back to Germany, back to a real factory, back to the possibility of scale. The little hand-built cars from Gmünd, all 52 of them, became the foundation of something the world was not yet ready to understand. They weren't just cars. They were proof. Proof that a name could be rebuilt, that beauty could be extracted from ruins, that the worst circumstances imaginable could produce, if the stubbornness was great enough, something worth keeping. Epilogue. What survives? Ferdinand Porsche died in 1951. He lived long enough to see the company survive. Long enough to see the 356 on the road. Long enough, maybe, to understand what his son had done, not just for the family, but for the name. Ferry lived until 1998. He saw the 911. He saw Le Mans victories. He saw the Porsche name become something that meant to the world a kind of uncompromising pursuit of the essential. Less weight. More feeling. The road as a conversation, not a commute. Somewhere in a museum in Stuttgart, a Gmünd-built 356 sits under careful light. One of 52. Aluminum body, hand-shaped by a man working in the cold. You can still see the slight irregularities in the metal if you look closely enough. The fingerprints of craftsmanship that no machine could replicate. And in garages around the world right now, someone is restoring a 356, sourcing impossible parts, fitting panels that were shaped by hand 70 years ago, trying to understand, through their fingers, what those men understood in Gemünd. The cold, the weight of a name, the particular stubbornness of people who refuse to accept that beauty is a luxury. It was never a luxury. For Ferry Porsche in 1947, with his father in prison and winter coming, it was the only thing worth doing. Iron from the ashes. The spirit continues.